Hi, welcome to the Duffle Bag Military Collectors Club meeting. Today I just want to give you a little background on the New York State Guard. Now, usually when people say to me, "Did you serve?" I say, "Yeah, I served breakfast, I served lunch." And I tell them I was in the New York State Guard. And they say, "Oh, I had an uncle in the National Guard." No, not the National Guard, the State Guard. Nobody ever heard of it. At one time, every state had its own state guard. Now I think there's about 26 states that still maintain one. The state guard actually goes back to the original militia. Now the background for state guards comes with World War I. The United States was now going to send a lot of people overseas. And the only time before that American troops served overseas was the Spanish-American War. Well, those units, they were called the National Guard at that time. However, they had 12-year-old drummer boys, just like, you know, in the 19th century, the early part of the century. They had 72-year-old men serving. They found out that those young people and old people couldn't stand the rigors of being on campaign. So they said, "You kids, you old guys, you're not going anywhere." They became, in New York State, special troops, they were called. Now in 1917, in the middle of the year, Congress created the Home Defense Act of 1917. And what that did was it created state guards so that there would be a pool of arm-bearing men that could guard factories and docks and harbors, etc. New York State, being one of the largest states, had the largest state guard created. And you can see that in all the regiments that they had. The State Guard in that Home Defense Act of 1917 said that they would be equipped with obsolete military arms and uniforms and other equipment. So my father was 16 years old in 1917. He couldn't go overseas, so he went into the State Guard. He was armed with a Krag rifle. A lot of people know what a Krag is. It's the predecessor to the famous Springfield. Okay, it's a bolt-action gun, had a bayonet. They were armed. And when you come up, if you want to look at this, the photos and stuff that I have, you'll see guys like my father serving, and they're bearing artificial weapons. Excuse me, not artificial, antique weapons. Anyhow, so the Guard was created. Now, the way they worked, they were in an armory. At one time, all the towns, the big towns and cities had armories in them, and that's where their National Guard troops served. When they got taken out, the State Guard was supposed to backfill them. So, in New York City, there was the 258th Field Artillery. Well, when they left the armory, the State Guard came in, and their job was artillery, except they didn't have any artillery to man, but they still backfilled. Okay, so World War I's over. State Guard goes into mothball, so to speak. World War II comes around. In the earlier part of 1941, when the federal government started raising the army, it became apparent that we were going to get involved in the World War in Europe. The State Guard was resurrected. Again, so you had fellas who couldn't volunteer, couldn't qualify for federal service. They joined the State Guard. they were armed with World War I equipment and original uniforms. They changed them later on to something more contemporary to the regular Army. And they had that same deal of backfilling units. So there's several regiments represented here. The one in our local area here in Putnam County, New York, was the 56th Infantry Regiment. And that's this uniform here. And when you come in, you'll see the crest that they wore right here. It's got 4 different designs on it, separated by a wavy white line. Well, as I said, the State Guard is really the original militia, the Minutemen. So in this corner, we have service in the Revolutionary War. Over here is 3 taro leaves. That's for service in the Philippines during the Spanish-American War. And on the bottom, you have a rampant lion and fleur-de-lis, 3 French fleur-de-lis. That's for the troops that went to Europe in World War I. The wavy white line is the Hudson River, and it separates this because it's units on both sides of the river. So that's the meaning of that particular crest for the units that served in Putnam, Westchester, and Dutchess County. This uniform is a World War II New York State Guard uniform. So it has NY. It did not wear US. They were strictly state troops serving the governor at that time. And of course, these are all the awards that this particular guy earned. This shows that he had service in World War I. The rest of them are World War II awards. This particular one is called Aid to Civil Authorities. I have one of them. I was in the State Guard during the 60s. They would help local police, or they fought forest fires. They were famous for fighting forest fires in Peekskill at Camp Smith. So that was aiding the civil authority. There's a recruit medal here. I have one over here. If you got 5 recruits, you got a bar that was put on the medal. I had one, and it was so hard to get somebody to join the State Guard when I was in the 60s. We used to go to the local VFW post and recruit guys there at the bar. They'd sign anything. At any rate, the buttons are New York State buttons. Nothing that would say federal government. This is an officer's hat, and it's got the New York State crest on it. And I could give you, some more information on the different insignias that are in these frames. But this particular item, this is a brassard, or an armband, NYG New York Guard. Now, they were issued these during World War II because if the call came out, guys are working in their offices or farmers or whatever, and they didn't get a chance to get their uniform, they would wear this brassard. I had identification I could get them through police lines, and they would draw a weapon and a cartridge belt and a bayonet, and off they went. So, like I say, it's the original militia. They still exist today, and I thank you for your time.
That was good.
Yes?
I was wondering, what patch do they wear now on their shoulder?
Today, the patch they wear is, if you got a close look at the middle of the crest here, this design is part of the new shoulder patch. Actually, it's a very poorly designed patch. Back then, it was very simple. NY. Everybody knew where you came from. When I was in our patch, and I'll discuss more modern use of the State Guard in another episode. But ours was a sailing ship called the Half Moon. It was Hudson's ship when he came up and discovered New York. It was fondly referred to as the Ship of Fools. But you know, sometimes soldiers have nothing to do except, you know, create names for shoulder patches and so on and so forth, mascots, and that's, anyhow, that's what they call it.
Good job.